said, oh,
Okay.
wow. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm working hard to get into better shape because for when my grandson is coming in January, I'm thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
say, strong core. Lots
Yeah,
of
I'm trying. Like even today already, I'm 10,000 steps. Just trying to keep going and yeah.
Yeah, well done you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Hey Shane, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
How's Christy?
Doing good, doing good. Busy as always. It's never seems to slow down.
Might be in the back.
Okay.
I think in our life we just keep saying, well, we get through this week, things will slow down, and they just never slow down.
I was gonna say I've been playing that game all summer.
Yeah. Oh, July just came and went. I can't believe how summer kids. Obviously, our kids are all married and growing up, but our local kids started school already around here, and the summer's gone.
Yeah, it went really fast.
Yeah, it did.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do for the summer, and it's almost over.
No, everybody asks me, "What are you guys doing for summer? Your summer plans?" Work.
Yeah,
Work.
that's what summer has been. Hey Leslie, welcome. Good to see you.
Hello.
Hello.
I think
Hi,
I'm
Leslie.
freezing up. Hi, Shane. Hi, Blair.
Hi.
I think I'm free. No, it's working.
Yep. It's working for me.
All right for you. I can hear
Yep.
you.
Good.
There's a little bit of freeze there.
As long as you're not picking your nose when it freezes.
It's too funny.
How's Lori doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I don't know if you heard, but I'm going to be a grandma in January.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
first one. My daughter's 5 months pregnant. We found out it's going to be a boy.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have four.
Sorry.
We have 4 granddaughters. Our first grandson comes in December, and another one due in February. We don't know what that one is yet, though. So
fantastic. That's
go from 4 to 6 here shortly.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
We have 8 grandkids.
8? Nice.
Wow. Congratulations. That's huge. Huge.
Yeah.
It's nice to see the family grow.
Mhm.
Right?
It is.
It's good. Yeah. That's great.
Mhm.
All the grandkids
welcome.
like Papa, unless like Meemaw's around, then they adore Christy. So like Papa's like chopped liver if Meemaw's around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hello, Colin.
Brent.
Hello, Brent.
Yes,
Did
Brent.
you get my latest text? I said yes to Monday would be great.
Got it.
We're getting together. Okay, good. Great. Do you need a link or do you still have my link?
I think I still have your link.
Just use that one. It's always
Great.
there. Okay, perfect.
Great. Well, welcome, Jane. Good to see you.
Oh, hi, Jane.
Hi.
Okay.
So Becky and Tim, just so that you know, I did go with Fathom and I did install it, and it seems to be working really well.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been great. Just thought I'd share.
Hey,
Yeah,
good
really.
to see you, Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Yep.
I'm glad you did. I actually really like the features. It's super simple and it works very well.
No kidding. It is way more in depth than it's super simple to use, but way more features than Otter. And it's the cat's meow. So
Meow.
it's just great. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, will Tim be joining us? Okay.
So
Good.
I see his shadow. So
Oh, there
only
we go.
the shadow knows.
Is it nobody knows like the nose knows, so speak beak.
I have not heard that one.
Oh, okay. Hey,
look,
I
Zach.
can't
No,
believe
this
it.
is Brian. Brian
Is this
Chamberlain.
Brian?
It always says Brian.
Yes.
No, it
Brian
doesn't always
Chamberlain.
say Brian.
Well, true.
Let's see here.
Sometimes it says Zach too.
Sorry, guys. I'll be
I'll be
listening.
listening.
Okay. Well, Zach, if that's Zach or Brian, I don't know who, but whoever it is, we're glad to have you
This
here.
is Zach, LOL.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So, Zach, in disguise as Brian.
Yes.
But it's wonderful to have you here, regardless of whether or not you're doing more than listening. So, very glad to have you back. We've missed you.
Yep.
Okay. So, are we in a place to get started?
We are. Let's
When
kick
will
this off. What?
Yeah,
Wait.
Jane.
I did not get that Zoom link for last week. So it is not up
Oh,
on.
did you email sent yet?
I texted her.
Good. That's the
Did I
best way
email her?
to do it. But at the time when you did that, she's probably asleep.
Ah,
Yeah, because when we were communicating, it was later in the day. You got to remember she lives in the Philippines. So she does work my time, but usually by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, she's heading off.
okay. Okay. I will endeavor to remember, along with all
Okay.
the other things I have to remember. But this is another tax week deadline. So all right, thank you.
Okay, no worries. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, are we possibly
We now are.
open?
And we're live on YouTube as well. So
Okay.
welcome anybody who's on YouTube. Thank you for showing up. Really appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you can, please. It will help me a lot to spread the word. And as this is free. With that, Patty.
All right. Stock and trade. Welcome to the 307th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience. My name is Patty. I'm a certified Mind Model Method coach and your co-host for tonight. Your host is Blair, and he's the one asking for likes and all the YouTube stuff to help him out.
Likes and subscribes.
Like and
And notify.
subscribes. Yes. Likes
Yeah.
and subscribes. I'll get the language down. I had the Facebook thing going for a while, but then
You did.
now we're doing YouTube. So
Hey, comment too. That would be great.
I am co-hosting with Tim and Becky Graff tonight. So Blair's program here, where he offers to coach and teach free, is a gift to you. And the liking and the subscribing is our way of saying thank you. So what are mind models? Mind models are simple thought frameworks that help us learn how we think. When we learn how we think, we can identify, repeat, and duplicate and be in control of our lives. So mind models have personally helped me overcome over a decade of depression. And for, I think it's going on 6 years now, I have been depression free, just using mind models.
Well done.
So that we are in the middle of a series on stress right now. It's navigating acute and chronic stress. Tonight is coping with stress. So ways of coping with stress. Couple questions for you. How do the words we use add to or help us cope with stress? So Leslie, are you up for a question?
Certainly.
Okay. How do the words we use help us cope with stress or add to our stress?
Big time. I'm just thinking of a incident earlier today where things were said and they weren't intentionally said as being malicious, but it was received as being malicious.
Were these things said to you?
Yep.
So did you feel judged by what was said? or hurt? What can
Yes,
you describe
judged.
your feelings?
Judged is a
for
good,
women not
judged
living?
is a good word.
Mm.
Yeah, but it was short-lived. I realized right away it was an ill-found judgment. And yeah, just dealt with it and evaluated it and continued on.
Okay.
So, how did you wind up evaluating it, if you don't mind me diving into it?
Realizing that it was a statement that's been made before, proven wrong before.
Right.
And just didn't need to continue the conversation down that way, down that
Right.
line any further. So
Okay.
it was felt and over with very quickly.
I agree. I'm not trying.
Which is interesting because looking at my calendar earlier here and setting up the connection. Blair, it was a year ago today that we first talked.
Wow.
Oh,
So-
you're having your 1-year Blair anniversary.
Blair-iversary.
That's your Blair anniversary.
But to think back a year ago where I was at and where I am now are just diametrically opposed situations.
Wow. I'm hearing something that, if you don't mind, thank you very much for the Blair-versary and everything else here. So Blair-versary, haha, yes, Zach. Haha. It absolutely is. But one of the things that I was thinking of is just taking a look at this, not in detail, but sort of in abstract, though. The concept of, okay, you felt a judgment, and how did you feel that judgment? What triggered in you? Yeah, well, first of all, do I have your permission to sort of work with you on this?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Good.
This will be interesting. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
I can't say that I felt it physically. It was just
no, it doesn't have to be physical. It felt it. Because when Patty said judged, you really resonated with that. Is that accurate still?
yes, that is accurate.
Okay. So is it fair to say that you felt judged?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you felt judged, what can that now, what, I'm assuming it took, 5 to 10 seconds to sort yourself out and move forward, correct? Or was it instantaneous?
It was a couple of seconds.
Okay. So even a couple of seconds can create a bit of a landslide effect or a vortex effect, where sometimes if it's a bigger feeling, things get sort of sucked in and it's a little harder to get out. So what I'm suggesting here that you might want to take a look at is when anybody does anything that triggers something that, do you notice, sorry, let me back up here, because there is a sequence to this, and the sequence is you sort of feel it coming on, that these people are coming in, like, or this person is doing something that it's sort of moving in some kind of setup. Does that ring a bell?
Not in this case,
Okay.
not in this case, but I understand what you're saying, and yes, that has happened previously.
Okay. Let's just use the previous scenario. Because usually we have sort of a 3 to 5 second, sometimes up to 10 seconds of warning that that judgment is just about ready to land. Okay.
Okay.
And when that occurs for me, and what I used to do with my life skills groups is right when that prep for that judgment was getting set up, and you could sort of sense it, you start flipping in your brain into information and thinking about this with your head. Because that judgment is going to impact sort of like in the heart. Okay, in your emotional area. And I go, oh, time to sort of bat the hatches down to my heart with a very little trickle down a hose, but mostly keep it up in my head and listen to the information. Actually, actively listen to the information. And by actively listening to the information, you make it even more about the information rather than the judgment.
Interesting.
Yeah. This is how we do still teach. Preemptively orientating oneself. Sorry, Colin, I didn't get the rest of your thing. What did you say?
Just trying to put things in my own words here. Preemptively orienting oneself to evaluate information. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. So that the whole point of this is you is preemptive.
It's preemptive to the judgment. It's what you're saying
Yeah.
that you're doing prior to the judgment actually landing. So that's the preemptive orientation.
Exactly. But you use
Information.
curiosity. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, I had nothing.
Okay. I thought I heard something. Anyway, my point here is if you can manage this to the point where you can hear what they're saying without getting caught up in feeling what they're saying, that's very highly effective. And when you do that on a proactive basis, it changes it from you don't even you sort of in the background recognize, oh, they were likely judging, but it's all of a sudden you're not caught up in the judgment. You're caught up into hearing and evaluating the information, gleaning the effective parts of it, or recognizing that it's wholly ineffective. Mm-hmm. And when that occurs, I just go, like, if it's wholly ineffective, then I can look at that person and go, so are you intending to attack me? Like in a very calm, very natural voice, or are you intending to judge me? Or are you intending to do whatever you perceive that they're trying to do to you? And a lot of times it's they want to get your goat. They want to prove you wrong. They want to back you into a corner. But by accepting the information as information and getting curious about it, obviously they have a bone to pick with you, but now they can get understood. And you can attempt to, I'd like to understand that. Like, it was not my intent to, irritate you, hurt you, piss you off, or do whatever. So I'd really like to find out how that happened for you. and how we might go about changing that. And it takes very little time usually to clarify those situations. It's just, one of the skills I've learned over the years to do that, just to preemptively, or, Colin said preemptively. I go sort of like more proactively rather than preemptively, because, hi, Shannon. Anyway, the preactive or the proactively feels more, first of all, intentional and less combative. Preemptively sounds like it's a preemptive strike. So who's going to hit first? And so I don't want to do it preemptively. I want to do it proactively. Okay. So,
Well, Blair, that segues into the mind model, proactive versus reactive.
yeah.
So would you be willing to give us some clarity on that? I don't know if everyone here has been exposed to that mind model.
I'm not even sure if Brent has been exposed to this one, proactive versus reactive. Oh, yeah, years ago. Okay. Oh, yeah, a very long time ago. Okay, proactive. We want to do things proactively instead of reactively if we can. Okay, sometimes we're caught off guard and things we do need to be reactive in response to something where we're blindsided by things. So this is the thing, but the lead up to everything of, if you are, I was going to say if you have your spidey senses up and you notice something coming, but it doesn't really take much. It doesn't really take spidey sense. It just takes, hey, how can I live more intentionally? How can I be intentional here in my life? And the more that we find ourselves wanting to be curious and engaging, so that one can, recognize things from the language that people are saying. And as that language unfolds towards you, it gives you clues about where they're coming from and how they're progressing. Even if it's just seconds long worth of language, there's this time thing, which gives your brain, with a little bit of practice, the time to sort of get, oh, can I stay curious? Can I be curious here? Can I take my curiosity into understanding? And when I take my curiosity into understanding them first, then I can be very proactive with myself, because I have the information and I don't have to be judgmental. And I can confirm that I have the information that way. Otherwise, I am going to be needing to react, and I'll probably come back as judgmental if I'm forced into a reactive corner. So the difference between proactive and reactive is, proactive, you take a forward-facing actions from a point of curiosity, seeking understanding, whereas reactive is you're in the present, but you're rear-facing, looking at how to defend yourself from generally the perceived threat / attack / concerning language that you just heard. Okay.
So with reactive, Blair, is reactive always take you into a judgmental place? If you're not pivoted, if you're not shifted to dealing with it as information.
If you're not pivoted, or if you can't see it as information, well, if you can't see it as information, we only have two ways of really filtering it, either as information or as emotion.
Okay.
So now we do have another way of filtering it. We can filter it through a who, what, where, when, why, or how. Now, if we filter it, if we are surprised, most people will default to why. And that's where, why did they say that? My language is why, past-based, questioning only. Did, past-based again, they, them, not you, say that. As opposed to proactive, oh, I'm curious. What is your point that you're trying to get to? Exploratory, exploring the information, not attacking, trying to figure out what's going on. And that's far more proactive and far more readily available to dig in with and sort of.
You can shift yourself from being reactive to proactive then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's just with switching out of you're probably in a why did they say that to what I'm curious. What are they meaning by this? And then just go into that and start exploring the questions.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's almost instantaneous.
Hey Blair, might I add something to that as well?
Fire away.
Yeah. So I would say I remember this from last time, the reactive state is almost as well allowing the situation to dictate your feelings and the way you're coming about your
Yep.
reactions to what's going on. And
Yep.
being proactive is you actively choosing, this is how I'm going to respond to what's happening.
Yes, absolutely true. Very well done. I did teach you that before. That's almost like it came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
No, extremely well done. That's well said. And I did mean to steal your thunder there. So very well done.
So with the proactive, you get to choose, and the reactive is something is just going and you're kind of swimming in the current.
And frequently against the current as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Tim, may I ask you a question? How does your internal self-evaluation align with your externally verifiable self-evaluation?
How does the internal align with the external?
Yes, when it comes to self-evaluation.
Well, the only way to make the two align is to actually do so. First, you think it through, that internal evaluation. Then you would need to do some sort of behavior to make it align externally. Obviously, you would do the behavior and then see if it aligns, test it.
So can you put that into the context of what that means in fair and balanced self-evaluation when it comes to fair and balanced?
Fair and balanced. Any thoughts here? Unfair and balanced?
So fair and balanced would be an indication and a name and label of what is. To be able to have anything fair or balanced, you have to have data points for what is happening. So internally, being able to name and label what is, describing your feelings, what may be experienced internally, and then being able to compare and contrast with the external evidence of the thing. So,
so then that creates the alignment that Tim was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I dive in?
Yeah, Blair,
here?
go ahead.
To me, when I came up with the mind model, fair and balanced self-evaluation, it's because most people don't have fair or balanced self-evaluation. They tend to beat themselves up. I've been pretty good in my life for a while, being reasonably fair, reasonably balanced. But Lori's been teaching me a lot about myself lately. One of those things is I am accepting the fact that I am a handsome man. I do not perceive myself, or not, that's not fully true anymore. That's interesting. I do not fully perceive myself as a fully handsome man, except for sometimes. However, that fair and balanced part was unbalanced in my life. It wasn't fair or it wasn't balanced. And I wasn't seeking external validation. I made just an internal judgment. I'm an average guy. I might look okay, might not. I don't know. But that's it. And some days I look better than others, just like everybody else. Some days you look better than others. But the bottom line here is starting to recognize the consistency of how somebody sees me has started putting my self-evaluation. I've started to actually look at myself literally in the mirror to go, what does she see when she looks at me to cause me to believe that she sees me as handsome? Because I know one thing, Lori is not lying to me. Lori lights up like a Christmas tree when she says that to me, and I just love it. So it's very true for her. All the external signals are right there. So that's very true for her. So I need to assess myself differently. And that has never been an easy thing for me to do. Yet I'm learning it now. So yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Based on some historical information that I think that I've interpreted, would it be fair to say that part of your external lack of verification might have been based on a judgment from someone's point of view that was not looking in the same perspective?
Well, my mom always found me cute and handsome.
I'm not talking about your mom. I'm talking about your ex-wife.
Yeah.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add to the data that I have. Lori is a very beautiful woman. And
yes,
although unless she was a gold digger, most beautiful women don't spend time with ugly men unless they're looking for that paycheck. So there's another external verification, is that she's a beautiful woman and she is with you because you're a handsome man.
Absolutely. And I never thought about it that way before. Thank you. I really didn't. So that's it. What is the difference between fair and balanced?
So that's why I was going back to the fair part, and balanced is I think that there was a perspective that was not a fair judgment or evaluation from an external perspective. And that feeds into our internal feelings.
Yes.
And then you
sorry,
have
go ahead.
Third element of men get better, are considered to be distinguished.
Extinguished. Yeah, put me out. I'm just a cigarette butt.
Distinguished. See, I told you I have, anyway, yeah, you know, where women, we all get to that point where we don't see that. We feel like we are getting old and faggy, and, you know, and that's just kind of a cultural, external, social view that also feeds into some of the data that we take in that is not necessarily fair, balanced, and unbiased.
So Colin, to your point about fair is men, as we age, are societally said we age more gracefully than women age, for the most part. That's not fair or accurate, but it is a stigma that women wear and a benefit that men tend to get over time. So men can be distinguished, and when we get gray hair, women are just look quote unquote old. That's it. But that's not it there. Yes, your bald head does look great there, Shay. Sorry, couldn't resist.
But again, distinguished. Where
yes,
when I was going through cancer, my thought, when I was going through the bald head phase, I didn't think of myself as being distinguished because societally,
right.
Women are not usually bald. Usually it's one other element of their looks as we judge, from a look perspective. So, I mean, it is the in thing to be bald right now. Look at Zach. Zach's not showing, but I know he's bald.
Yes, he
And
is.
he looks great.
Yep.
Well,
So-
Blair, back to fair and balanced.
Yes.
Isn't fair and balanced taking the internal and externally verifying it
Yes.
so that you're not being sunk by your own opinions?
That's where I was trying to get to. Yes. In short, what I was trying to say is that societal has these things here that we that are unfair, but we have to look at that in terms of how do we see ourselves and how do others see us. And that is my thing with fair, with the balance part of this. I'm balancing out with Lori's help because it's like this whole thing about finding that mid ground, and her finding me handsome and I find her gorgeous and beautiful is that balancing piece. That's where it's not between the two of us. It's not her, it's me with my view of my looks and her view of my looks need to be balanced out. Now, effort. If I'm putting out effort on the job and other people aren't, but they're getting rewarded, I can get rather upset about that. But is that balanced? I can look at that as, how do I balance this out? What am I doing? And what might I do differently? And for me, it's about finding external verification, like, in other words, talking to somebody, talking to a boss, or talking to people to try and find reasonable information from people, getting it from a third party. Now, sometimes that's not always possible. And people who are in very challenging jobs sometimes wind up taking stress leave because the expectation of what they should be doing from one party, their boss, to what they can accomplish, especially when they have multiple bosses, literally, becomes unreasonable. Yet everybody thinks that they're the only one who's consuming that person's time. So there isn't balance. So the balance, it becomes heavily unbalanced. And as a result, a fairness quotient needs to be factored in as well. Is this, and by the way, I look at fair and balanced. Another way that you can look at it as reasonable. So so Tim and Becky got to reasonable simultaneously with me. So reasonable is another way of focusing in on this. There's a thing called the reasonable man theory. Go for it, Beck.
Hopefully you guys can hear us.
Yes.
So reasonable. I've worked with quite a few people, including myself, when I'm feeling extra stressed about something and I'm in that internal judgment state. And that question, is this reasonable? Like, would you judge your friend the same way? If your bestie was having the same issues, would you be coming at that in the same way? Sometimes looking at it from an external perspective, like, would I treat Tim the same way that I'm treating myself on the inside, that internal self-talk? That level of reasonability based on skill, based on circumstance. So often it's because they're too general and not being specific about what it is that we're making that unfair judgment instead of being reasonable and really taking a look at what it is.
I think that's well said. Yep, Brent.
So then Becky would be externalizing her with herself, with changing her perspective from an outside source. So externalizing her, being able to externalize herself without having somebody else there. Like if there's nobody there, is that reasonable? And then looking at it from an outside view, so you can externalize that, bringing it external again with the internal to external. So that's another way of doing that.
Yep.
Just like Blair was saying, whether nobody's there. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Colin had an interesting question, Blair. Can something be fair but not balanced, or balanced but not fair?
Short answer is yes. That's how come I needed both. So I've had lots of people not notice how much they're being unfair to themselves, but they perceive themselves as fully balanced. Okay. There's a lot of head nodding yes. So Shane, did you want to speak to that? Because you immediately started nodding yes. So
I feel that I judge myself unfair to myself, put a lot on myself, but still give the outward appearance that I have my poop in a group and I'm very balanced on the outside, but my internal thoughts are not.
And that's part of this whole thing. Now, have you ever felt balanced on the inside, but also feeling unfair to yourself?
Have I ever felt unbalanced or balanced?
Balanced with yourself, yet you're still unfair.
Oh, yeah.
What sort of circumstances have created that, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, the pressures of running. We're ranchers in Nebraska, just the pressures of running a business and, am I doing all I can? Am I doing everything? Did I make that right decision? Yeah, okay, things are working out pretty good. You must have made the right decision. And you're just like, oh, wait for it. Something else is going to come. So,
yep. One of the things that I can honestly tell you, Colin, for balanced and fair, the biggest time that I wound up dealing with my dad going into a coma back in the day. And once I got over the shock of that, this is about 2 to 3 months into his coma, I was finding my balance again. But I'll tell you right now, life did not feel fair. My life, the life around me, nothing felt fair. Yet I was feeling balanced moving forward. And I feel a large degree of balanced right now, like being balanced in my life again. But with all my medical stuff, I don't feel like it's fair. So, it's not fair. It's what is, and I can deal with that. But I sure as hell don't feel like it's fair right now. I've got so much I want to do. and so much I can't do due to my my health, my cancer. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So Blair, what I'm hearing in a lot of this, in adding to stress, I'm hearing beliefs. I'm hearing a lot of, I'm hearing beliefs behind some of these things that add to our stress, beliefs behind our language. And how do you discover ineffective beliefs that you might hold? How do you discover those?
Well, those are, to be perfectly honest, they're tricky. They're those and basically I use a lot of the 3 E's, but I sort of I usually wind up getting pissed off at my life, or something is not working or whatever. And I realize that where I am is not being as congruent as I need it to be. So part of that comes down to, am I accepting what is? So the mind model of acceptance and the mind model of what is. We need to identify, literally name and label. And usually I haven't named and labeled what is actually happening to me, how I am actually feeling. So describing feelings need to kick into there. And so I need to start doing basic self-work. Now, it doesn't take me too long, 5 minutes, sometimes under a minute, to start naming and labeling things. It usually also takes me venting off some of that emotion that's there. And as I'm venting it off, I'm stumbling into my belief of it either being unfair, unwhatever, not whatever. And sometimes the opposite also happens, is when I stumble into things where things are going exceptionally well, I want to identify what's going exceptionally well so I can identify it, repeat it, and duplicate it so that I can make success more in my charge. I get to be able to manufacture success more consistently. But when it's not working well, I have to be able to get out of that relatively quickly. So, identifying feelings is a huge place to begin. Naming, labeling, identifying feelings really kick into gear here. Clarifying assumptions. Yes. Becky, did you want to start talking or to that? Becky?
Yeah, so sometimes like that, the internal self-talk that Blair's talking about, it's an assumption. It's an assumption that it's not, it feels unfair, it's not fair. We have the dialogue again. And so to be able to name and label what is, it really does come down to clarifying the assumption that you're having, whether it's with yourself or with another party or a situation. Like, what makes it this way, or how do I know? That can help you really put a clean name and label to what it is, so that you can accept that data point and then choose forward facing which direction you want to go, and letting go of some of the stress that you may be carrying with you because you've been general, or you're feeling generally, but not thin sliced it down to what it is specifically to actually get traction with.
I think that's really a critical thing, because you've got the specificity. You've got to specify exactly what that is. And if you can't, if it's just, I don't like what's going on. But if you can't go, I don't like this, and then this comes, if it's just, I don't like this, and that's it, that's a generalization. That's not being specific.
So for example, Blair, right now, I do not like the weather at all. It's thundering, it's lightning, it's shaking
It's
our
literally
RV.
shaking.
Our lights are
Yeah.
blipping
Wow.
out. So I could say I don't like this. And inside I'm like, I really don't like this at all. But when I start naming and labeling what it is and I'm seeing the flash of light out the window, I can start redirecting my focus to you lovely folks on this call today and the information that we're talking about. It gives me practicality in what it is that I have control over. What is happening is there is a massive storm that rolled in that was not on the radar. It wasn't supposed to be here. It's dropping rain and hail, all of which are trigger points for me. So what's actually happening on the inside is I'm fighting against a lot of adrenaline, fight or flight, and all those kinds of things. But I'm able to put it into a very specific place, identify and describe what I'm feeling. I just told you guys, and then identify what is happening. And I'm choosing to focus on the things that are getting me traction because I can't do anything about that out there. And so in this moment, I'm choosing to stay present and working through this in the moment. And so whether it's a situation or whether it's another person, what Blair's talking about, describing your feelings, naming and labeling what is, and then choosing what you want to do with it, releases so much tension and pressure, stress, and allows you to
I want to actually, before you go too much further, I don't know if you guys heard it, but I need you guys to think back just 30 seconds ago when Becky's face was looking stressed and she had a ton of tone in her voice and stressful tone. And that was her in the present describing what's going on, but backward facing or facing backwards, looking back. And then she chose to literally turn herself around and face forward to the group. And all of a sudden, the stress started falling from the tone of her voice, her look on her face. Everything came back in to being in control of herself right there. And that's that being in the present still, but facing forward. And that's what it does to us. It repositions and it changes how we represent our model of the world to ourselves and others in very real time. Good job, Becky. Sorry for interrupting. I just saw that as like spot on. Brent.
Yeah.
No, that
Well
was
done.
great. I just wanted to see like how the stress. I just wanted to make sure I may be a little confused here, but so when you're not fair and balanced, like starting with Matt was going, your internal state, that's it. It's just an internal state because you're not externally validating or verifying what's really going on. You were like you were saying, Blair, you just feel this way. You weren't explaining, like you weren't pointing out like, oh, this is something I see or what is. It's just the way I feel. And then you add the beliefs in there, like Patty was bringing up, and then that as well, internal state. So those beliefs behind that can add to assumptions, which Becky had brought up. So you have your internal state, you're not being fair and balanced, so you end up with assumptions, and you have beliefs in those assumptions as well with those beliefs. So that adds on to it if you're not, describing what those feelings, naming, labeling, and identifying what is, being able to start there and then externalize what's going on and then evaluate. You're stuck internally, and it's really effective or ineffective for like what you're doing. So it adds to stress. It's adding to the stress.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. It's adding on to the stress. All that right there is adding on to the stress. Yeah, like Becky was saying, gas on the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
You're stressed out and you're doing this, you're staying internal and doing those three sections we just went over, and it's just add on to it and you just boom. And like what you described on Becky's face, like that, if she was to stay in that state, it was just on and it would build, if she was not able to get out of that state and be present looking forward, it was just, and you can see that if it's like turning point, it's a tipping point.
Yep. Absolutely.
You can also see that proactive versus reactive going on in Becky's example too. She's looking at the storm as information as opposed to the storm as something that is triggering a reaction to her. She's choosing which one she uses to navigate this situation. So again, great illustration, Becky. Well done. I wanted to bring out, we haven't talked about Blair's book for a while, the Ultimate Mind Hacking book. And Jane, there's a link to put in the chat for that. But Blair's book focuses on unhealthy mindsets. And when we started looking at coping with stress, a lot of coping with stress boiled down to identifying, naming, and labeling the unhealthy mindsets, and then choosing a path out of those, which his book does give you a path out of those unhealthy mindsets. So we can slide in and out of these. I just want to, there's a list of the unhealthy mindsets that I typed up for you, Jane. Could you throw that in the chat too, please? Because I think that we can slide in and out of those. We don't have to be stuck in them to experience an unhealthy mindset, especially something like perfectionism. That kind of comes and goes sometimes if you've been raised with that, or barrier focused, or just being angry, procrastination, ungrateful, all or nothing. All of these, to have a better understanding of what those are doing to our insides and how we might navigate them and deal with them differently. You know, Becky's example was absolutely spot on. The book, I think, is worth looking at for things that we don't have the time to deal with on the show here. So
I want to actually build on that, because I was just reviewing today with Sense my sort of rewrite of Ultimate Mind Hacking.
You've got a version 2, an updated version 2.
Yeah. And it went from about 120 pages to right around 300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's definitely expanded.
It definitely has expanded, and a lot more stories, a lot more descriptive stuff of how to use the mind models, how to use mind models to counter the unhealthy mindsets and that sort of thing. Now, one of the things, I'm not promising this, but I'm throwing this out because I know most of you guys already have the book. So I'm going to just say, I am thinking of doing a podcast where I give away a chapter a week or so before the launch of the book.
Okay.
So, and just sort of saying, okay, for those of you that want to come in, I'm going to be just doing this. It's already written. We were working with our book designer, who's actually putting the borders on the book, would be willing to do some copy editing. Copy editing is actually done, Colin, thank you. Yeah, it's getting really close to final. But we're, you know, it actually, I'm going to say, Colin, as I go through this, I might throw this out to people and go, because the book isn't published yet, so it isn't sort of launched, as it were. And I just like to see about building some traction, seeing about, you know, letting you guys know. And if you know of people that would like to read a chapter a week or so on that, and do it one chapter every so often, well, a week, because I've got over 30 chapters in the book written. So anyway, I'm open to feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts now, if you don't mind. Do you like that idea? If you like it, okay. Shana likes it.
I'm always up for a good advanced read. I'm always up for that. That sounds very exciting.
Well, that looks like everybody here. So, okay. So that's what I'm going to do, and it'll be a little while in the process. But Colin, that means I do have time to do rewrites as well, if a chapter doesn't do whatever it needs to do. Okay, so there you go.
Okay.
And that won't start until probably 2 weeks from now, because I have to get through IBC, igniting the mind conversation.
We also have one more week of the stress series, which takes.
No, I'm not going to be doing that in here. per
Oh,
se.
okay,
I wasn't planning on doing that.
okay.
I was actually thinking about doing a different podcast on the book.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
I've got one other marketing piece that I wanted to borrow everybody's opinions on. Ultimate Mind Hacking. I was thinking of just doing this one, Ultimate Mind Hacking, second edition, or renaming the book something different. If you guys have other names that you would like the book to be called, other than Ultimate Mind Hacking, edition 2, let me know, because this is the time to do it. We were debating on a new cover or not, and I thought just put it second edition, but whatever. Anyway,
So I get
Hacking
it's just an
Explode.
expanded version then? It's more the
Yeah,
same similar
I
topic,
agree with
but
Yeah.
Brent.
expanded.
Instead
Yeah,
of
it
a
is.
version 2, it needs to be the
Yeah.
expanded version. Because
Yeah.
there are lots of books that
Yeah.
have their condensed and expanded versions. So that
Right,
if you want more
right.
information, you go to the expanded version. So anyway, yes, new sells way better than updated. And expanded
Correct.
sells
Yeah.
way better than version 2. So
Okay, yeah. Okay,
it's director's
Director's
cut,
cut.
as we said, yeah.
yeah,
So
cool.
okay, well,
Thank you.
I'm torn here with our time to, I think we'll save what's left of this and put it into next week's program and start our wrap up. Are we okay with that? Does anybody have any last minute things that they want or need to say? Questions? Or are we good to start the wrap up?
I think this would be a great place to start the wrap up.
Okay, I think as well. So Matt, we haven't heard from you. You joined us late. We are doing ways of coping with stress. So not a lot to wrap up, but I'm interested in your thoughts.
I'm just catching up to listening to what you guys were talking about. I'm a little sluggish tonight. I'm a little tired again from the kids keeping me up, and then we just had a little bit of a episode in the house. Now we have a hole in the wall. So yeah. So I'm just here relaxing. I need to just come down here and be with the people. So yeah.
Well, really glad that you joined us, even though it's
Yes.
late. So thank you for that.
Colin, can you do
You
your
want
wrap
to
up
give your
before you
wrap
leave?
up before you go?
8 out of 10. Fair and balanced was new for me. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Super.
Thank
Well
you for
done.
joining us, Colin.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. When someone leaves, all the names shift, and I need to figure out where I am again. Shane, would you like to participate in wrap up?
Absolutely. 9 out of 10. The proactive reactive, something I hadn't heard of, obviously. I like the proactive. We get to choose. Reactive, more letting someone or some situation dictate the path.
Yeah.
The fair and balanced. Is this reasonable? And then, of course, the internal self-talk. I like that one as well. So very good episode.
Well,
Great.
thank you. Give Christy our best. Tell her we miss her.
And
Hope that
one
at
to
some point
was
she'll
it-
be able to jump back on in the future.
Did you give us a 1 to 10?
9.
9. Thank you.
Okay. Leslie, would you like to participate in the wrap up?
Certainly. I'm going to give it a 9. Didn't quite make as many notes tonight, but what was being said was extremely interesting. Again, I agree with Shane. This proactive versus reactive is good. And before that, where we talked about clipping emotion into information, I think was a very, very key part. That hit home to me tonight.
Thank you, Leslie. Brent, would you like to give us a wrap up tonight?
Yeah. Yes. Coping with the stress. I mean, I think that we hit, I guess, describing there at the end with Becky's excellent example there. Ways of coping with stuff, being proactive and not letting the stress, the situation and stress push her and guide her to how she's feeling and how she's responding to it. She chose to evaluate external what is and what's happening, and identify, name and label, and identify what is going on, how she's feeling, or what she's feeling, and then what to do next to going forward. So that was a great example on how to effectively cope with stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I give it a 9 for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Lori, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
I will give it a 9. It was very good. And again, I love Becky's example because you're living through it. That was really amazing. And that's hard. Kudos to you. Yeah, lots of good information. Thank you, Blair.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Shannon posted hers. I enjoyed the refresh on proactive and reactive. I appreciated Becky's comment. To have a fair and balanced evaluation, you have to have data points. 8 for me tonight. Thanks, everyone. So that is Shannon's evaluation.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay. Blair, would you like to give us your evaluation tonight?
Yeah, I like this one here. Diving in, we're navigating chronic acute stress, coping with stress in particular. And I couldn't have set up Becky to say what she said. Like, that was like perfect, spot on. The whole thing with the storm and thunder and everything else happening, and how that all triggers you, and what goes on with that. Of course, it's going to be a trigger. That is huge. So thank you. And then just watching you, listening to you, literally seeing you pivot right there in real time, right here, was like, holy crap. And it's congruent, it's sounding congruent, it's being congruent, it's just doing it in real time. Wow, that's like 9.5 actually. So thank you.
So Tim and Becky, would you like to give us your evaluation tonight?
Sure. So I'm going to be honest. It's a 9 for me tonight, and I say that for myself. I enjoyed the conversation around proactive versus reactive. I'll fully admit, when this storm rolled in, I kind of went into forgive my French, but oh shit mode. We have stuff outside. We have stuff outside, and I'm picturing it blowing down the road, and yeah, I kind of freaked out, and it stressed me out a little bit, and I wasn't as effective on tonight's call as I might have been. Whereas she dropped into what am I doing, or what might I do, and information. And so the proactive versus reactive, I mean, that was playing out in real time right here tonight. So I enjoyed the conversation around that. I also have with the fair and balanced self-evaluation. So one of the things that came up for me is I had some name and labels put on me when I was younger that were not accurate. And as I grew up, not having these skill sets, I mean, that really affected me growing up. And they were, I felt balanced in myself, but these names and labels that I had were not in alignment. Like, it did not feel, but yet I adopted them. And it really it brought a lot of stress into my life for the longest time until gaining these skill sets. And then looking at it from a place of, okay, this isn't even reasonable. Like, this is this is not accurate, and updating and being able to move forward has been huge for me. But during that whole time before these skill sets, it didn't feel accurate. Like it was, I felt complete, yet these judgments of others had been placed upon me, and it wasn't fair. Well, can I ask, am I thinking through this correctly, Blair?
Yeah, it wasn't fair. You're right.
Okay. And anyway, it caused me quite a bit of stress throughout my life until being able to learn these skill sets and to be able to evaluate and to update and work through that process. So I enjoyed that, and I want to apologize, Patty. I know curveball there. I meant to speak to this earlier, but I was freaking out about the storm. So a little bit of a lot going on for me tonight.
But may I ask you a question, Tim?
Please.
What you say you had these sort of ineffective beliefs that surrounded, it sounds like they surrounded your identity in terms of who you are.
Correct.
And at what point in your life did you question those things?
To be honest with you, they were a question throughout. Like from the moment they were put on me, they did not feel accurate. In fact, I remember thinking to myself, like, this does not feel in alignment. This isn't accurate. Yet I'd been told this repeatedly over and over and over again. And so it became, after a while, I started to believe it. It became a part of me. Right. And that has actually held me back from a lot of things in my life.
Yeah. I can really relate. I'm dyslexic, and I was called stupid and dumb and a moron, literally. In grade 5, a psychiatrist described me in front described some of the testing that I took, because I wasn't performing up to what teachers' expectations had of me completely. They didn't quite get it. But I was described as, in certain areas of my learning, I was at the moron level, which was a valid name and label back in the day.
I was going to say, those were valid. They were right in the psych books. Those were diagnostic categories, moron and idiot. All of those were actual psych diagnoses. So.
Yeah. So I was a moron, but I was also in certain areas of testing at a genius level. So I'm a moronic genius. But I focused on the moron part of my description to myself for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
So I relate to names and labels being put on. And it took me a lot of time to focus on my genius elements and learn how to sidestep my moronic elements, as it were. And I spent a long time figuring out how to do that. And it seems to be working relatively well for myself. So I'm pleased with that. Everybody has gaps, though. Everybody has pieces that don't work and parts that work better. And that's what I learned over the years. So I'm not that special. I'm not that unique. I just got named and labeled. And fortunately, I got both. So I could focus on what I chose at the end of the day. So I chose genius. Well, most of the time.
Well, it's interesting because the names and labels tend to stick from the outside. They tend to stick more if they come from somebody who's perceived to have some authority in your life.
Yeah.
So a parent or a teacher or, someone of that nature. If a random school kid in the yard doesn't carry the same weight with the names and labels. So,
well, and add to that, Patty, it was my father. A lot of these names and labels came from my father. And so to your point, and after hearing it over and over many times, I mean, it's my dad. I looked up to him growing up, and so it becomes a part of you. You start to believe.
And it's an interesting thing too, because the names and labels that we use, like when we're describing feelings or we're naming and labeling what is, that is a direct correlation to stress. So names and labels that he adopted through no fault of his own, just because if that's, we're all people doing our best with what we have, contributed to his stress level over time until he took a moment to externalize and get some external evidence. Does that support? Is it reasonable? Is there any truth to this? Or is it just this manufactured idea that doesn't have any root in anything? And it can come from so many places, like when we were talking about with Leslie, your experience earlier. And I love, Blair, how you broke down like the process. Like you can sort of feel it coming on, and you can choose to look at it with information, receive the information, stay curious about it, and be able to then evaluate the information. Is this accurate, inaccurate, what part of this, fits, what doesn't, and then be able to like clarify the assumptions, or what it is your intention to do this. You can get curious about it, you can get utility. And that's how come it's so important to describe feelings, name and label, and stay present with the information from curiosity, because names and labels, for me, names and labels can create a whole lot of stress. And I'm very cautious about names and labels that I put to things. So I may be having a PTSD moment, but saying I suffer from PTSD is something I don't want to do, because I don't want to behave that way. I don't want to adopt that as an identity or part of my identity, because it's just a moment in time that's creating a situation that is challenging. And I refuse to give away my control to that, my power to that, because I get to choose. And great with the skills that we're learning here through Blair, it allows us to thin slice moments and get utility and not get stuck and keep in motion and movement quicker than if we just somebody said that you're that one thing. And if you hold them in high esteem, well, that just must be how it is. Instead of saying, that's interesting, I don't quite see it that way. What might I do? What's in alignment? What's balanced and fair for me, or reasonable based on external evidences from more than one person, right? Blair, 3 or 4. Seek for resources, seek for information, seek for feedback from others, and then update accordingly.
So one of the things, just to share really fast, one of the things that I remember hearing in my model coach that really stuck with me, talking about the internal being congruent with the external, is one of the ways. I remember the picturing a bucket in front of me, walking around with this bucket, and all information goes into the bucket. And then it's after the fact, I sift and sort through the bucket, what fits, what's reasonable, what seems, what can I use? Can I use this moving forward? Is this true, accurate? And basically you look at everything that goes into the bucket as information, and what fits and what doesn't fit, you toss out. Right. And I remember that imagery in my model coach. And I can't remember who shared that, but there was that image of just carrying around a bucket. Everything goes into the bucket. Everything, feedback that we get, information, names and labels, and then it's basically what is reasonable and what do I want to toss out. And that has helped me a lot. I filter everything through the bucket.
And when you can evaluate it that way, the stress that is released, because you're not like holding on to all this stuff that's not yours anyway, it just allows a lot more flexibility, and you're able to get more utility. 9 for me tonight. I don't think I gave my number. Did you give my number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Blair.
I just wanted to also, as you were talking there, Tim, I was reflecting on, I forget where it was, but you hadn't come into my model method coach training yet, but you had gone through the How to Rewire Your Mind for Wealth numerous times. And I remember sitting in this booth, I think it was in Denver.
Denver workshop.
It was Denver workshop.
Yeah. And you were, Becky was saying, you know what, Blair, I know when Tim has been listening to, the Blair Dunkley Experience or the Blair Dunkley, oh, sorry, How to Rewire Your Mind for Wealth. Because he talks differently to me. And I go, wow. And I recall so much change going on for you during those time frames. It was just a shocker, as it were. So well done, you. And you have pivoted so far from then, like from a truck driver mentality to a coach, and being uber compassionate and understanding, and being able to relate to people so easily. Whereas before you'd sort of back up and get all tense and nervous about trying to relate, and yet you're so relatable. It's not funny. Yeah, Becky kept on saying about how she believed in you and all the things she saw in you. And I concur, it's all there. And you would say the same thing about Becky as well, like how amazing she was, and she is. So there you go.
I remember going through my model coach and thinking, okay, now I have a process to guide my thoughts, guide my actions. And Becky went, well, now I have a name and label for what I'm already doing. And
that's right.
And that's what it was, honestly, for us, is I saw a lot of these skill sets already in her. She just now had an accurate name and label for what she'd been doing. For me, it was definitely a process. I had, a lot of shifts and adopting these skill sets. But yeah, it absolutely has changed my life for the better, by far.
And Jane, the truck driver mentality, not open, not seeking, not curious. I go from point A to point B. I don't ask questions. I just get my job done.
And it was content driven, content driven, content driven.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So can I ask, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Did you have a point in your life where you went, I am going to prove them, and I'm doing a generalization, them wrong, that is not what I am to, and then at some point, did that shift from the reaction of I'm going to prove them wrong to a proactive, I don't need to prove them wrong because it doesn't matter?
So, it's funny you bring that up, Jane. So growing up in high school and, well, through a majority of my teenage years, I did very well in school. I can own the fact that I was very intelligent. I was a 4.0 student.
Was?
Fair, am.
Well, he's not in,
Okay,
yeah.
well, okay, yes. Am a 4.0 student. I did very well in school. And through those years, I had the mentality of tell me I can't do something and I'll prove you wrong. I was very just active moving forward. It was actually so my later teens, my parents ended up divorced. It was a whole ordeal. And that is actually when things kind of went sideways, and I had these names and labels that came into my life that I adopted, and things definitely went sideways for me at that point. And once I adopted these, I had a really hard time. And that's how come I shared, it did not, when these names and labels are being put on me, they did not feel in alignment. They did not feel accurate. But after, so long of hearing it, especially from somebody that I looked up to and cared for, I adopted them. It became a new normal. And I struggled for many, many, many years after that, until, again, learning these skill sets and then having suddenly a process to be able to shift things. And then, it at that point, it was back to that person that I used to know that was kind of like, I'll prove you wrong. And now I had an actual process to be able to think through it and to be able to behave to move forward in a way that was reasonable, in a way that was proactive. Because I'll admit, before the skill sets, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was very stuck.
And it's shifted his way of being, because now he's been able to see in himself the shift and be able to own his own stuff, regardless of external thoughts, feelings, and opinions of others. He knows what's true for him. And so that self-confidence growth, it has shifted to his way of being in that space.
And now looking back, I realized that a lot of those names and labels that were placed on myself were simply judgments, that things that my father was dealing with, things that he was going through the divorce, his projection, and they were judgments that he had on him that were his, that he was looking to put on someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very frequent in that kind of situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, Matt, I want to acknowledge what you put in the chat, and I'm so sorry for that challenge with your own father. Fathers are very impactful, and you are one, and you are impacting your children. And that is, you get to make choices. And it sounds by what you put here, you acknowledge his choice and you're making your choices. But I still want to acknowledge that that's a very heartfelt share. So
And
thank
just
you for that
just to
transparency.
speak to this really quick, I know that at the time my father didn't mean any malice. There were, it wasn't his intention to do any harm. In fact, he had most likely the best of intentions. He thought he was, by telling me that I was messing up or whatever, that I was somehow gonna help me, that I would move forward. He was just going through a difficult time in his life. So anyway, I just share that sometimes it is meant with malice, other times it's not.
And I hope for you, Matt, that sometime that the situation rectifies, because it is a very, very challenging one.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for sharing that as well.
Okay. Well, my wrap up, I want to acknowledge something that Becky said, which is that we do behave to the meanings of words. And that's part of what makes naming and labeling so incredibly powerful. And I love the way, Becky, you say you really are careful what names and labels you choose. Because that in many ways, the choice of your name and label is being proactive in dealing with whatever's on your plate. I can remember a time, my husband and I have been married for a significant number of years, and we were somewhere around 7 years married when he had a difficult time with unemployment. And I think in 1 year he had like 7 W-2 forms, just trying to hold body and soul together. And I was working some. And I remember having this discussion with him where I'm telling him, how I see him through my eyes and what incredible talent he had, and that people would be really fortunate to have him as an employee, or he could do his own business. I mean, to me, and he became very angry with me. And, he, out of his own beliefs, he accused me of a number of things. And I remember looking at him and saying, we're just going to have to agree to disagree, that I think you're better than you do. I think you're better than you are, than you think you are. And, that put an end to the discussion. But that was a turning point for him, because he hadn't had anybody really go to the mat and believe in the talents, the strengths that he had to bring to a marketplace in general.
Wow.
And so we don't know oftentimes where our beliefs are until somebody challenges them. And I think the challenge, part of what my models do in general is to create a challenge to some of these beliefs that we've held on to for so long. With depression, I remember Blair saying, do you need to feel this way? I just do feel this way. Okay. What do you mean need to feel this way? I don't need to feel this way. But the idea that I could have a choice about the way that
Yes.
I felt. And it's like, wait a minute.
The look
What
on your
do
face
I
was
believe? What do I believe about
Yeah.
depression in general, you know, and me in specific? And so somebody sometimes needs to challenge us when we don't even know that we're being ineffective. There are areas we're blind to our choices. So anyway, tonight was a 9 for me. So Jane, would you like to finish your wrap up and take us out?
Thank you. Yes. Excellent night tonight. I'll give it a 9. It's interesting that for me, naming and labeling is so important, and yet I was able to watch Becky do her thing and name and label and physically show that, and that you know, facing forward, facing backward, that whole thing, and adding the visual, you know, in real time right now. This is what's happening, and this is where I'm getting to, and very powerful for me. I had a frustrating afternoon and got to where I slowed down, had to ask myself, what are you feeling? I'm feeling frustrated. Well, what's making you feel frustrated? And then start breaking it down. And as soon as I started putting the names and labels to what was it specifically that I was frustrated about, that I was able to say, oh, well, what might you do about that? You need to clarify, ask the right questions and clarify to the client that, you know, and then I'm going to not fill in the blanks there, but it was very freeing. And it was, so when you went through your example tonight, it was like further, it was an external verification to me of exactly what I needed to do and what I did do, and was pleased to see that, oh, and then I did choose. I didn't need to still feel frustrated. I could choose to say, you know, to get curious, figure it out, and choose to move forward. And so that was wonderful. I enjoyed the discussion very much tonight. I wrote down a lot of things. Curiosity is seeking understanding. I don't know if I've ever specifically had those words put into a sentence before, but I understood it tonight, and that was cool. And yeah, my paper is bleeding because I write in red. All the good, the really good stuff's in black, but everything else is in red. When I wrote, oh, that was cool, and I even drew a bucket. So, and had my little questions and stuff. So thank you very much. You know, thank you everybody for being here, because you all add so much to the discussion. It brings a subject that we obviously all have an interest in, and takes it up, not just a notch, but many notches up, and it makes it alive. It's that interaction, just it fills in. To me, it fills in the color to what could be a very black and white picture. And so, you know, we're live on Are we live on Facebook? We are live on Facebook.
Live on YouTube.
We're live on YouTube. That's right. We're live on YouTube. The recording will be available as soon as we actually very quickly. And I admit I am not always good at going back and making a comment like I should. I do try to view it and to do a like, but again, the like doesn't have to happen immediately, but it is very helpful. It's a great way for us saying thank you back to Blair for making this available to us. And again, I went back and watched some of the other bits and pieces where I need to fill in my notes, because I either didn't quite get it, or I needed to reinforce the conversation. And so your likes and comments is is just as important. And when the video does show up on Facebook, again, your likes and comments help others that are in the group, helps them be aware that the recording is up. And because we are announcing the YouTube thing, it lets them know that they can jump over to YouTube and watch it there too. And I do happen to like the YouTube version better than Facebook, because if you pause on Facebook, it's not really good about holding your place. Where YouTube, if you stop and you come back later, you can start where you left off if it's the same device. It's a different device, you kind of have to catch up on yourself, but there's a lot of versatility that's available through that. So, you know, thank you very much, Blair. It's always a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor for me.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap for tonight. And we will look forward to seeing you all. I think next week will probably be a close to the stress series. So we'll attempt to wind it up next week. But thank you all for being here. We do appreciate and value you so much. So we will see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Guys, take care. Bye for now.